Great to be back with you here on NFL Betting Blitz. Gino Bacola alongside Erik from ETOF21 Sports. Uncle Rico, thanks so much for filling in. It's been a busy few weeks for me with Breeders' Cup stuff, then got a little sick. But now for the home stretch, focus is on the NFL season. As you can see nowadays with technology, you can pass sicknesses through the microphone because I send it on over to Erik his way. He's feeling a little hoarse right now. How's everything going on your end, buddy?
Doing okay, man. Battling, dude. Just battling.
And what's
being in front
nice
of the TV today watching football, can't complain.
I think LeBron said it last night, coming off another win for the Lakers. They've won 5 in a row, come off a couple game road trip. He said, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? Sit back on the couch with some wine and not move and watch NFL football all day long. It's a pretty good plan from LeBron. And I think a lot of us out there will be doing the same thing as we ramp up now, man. We are really moving along in this NFL season. What was cool about last week too, we had some of the best teams in the league needing to win late in the game, and they needed other teams to kind of fade, to kind of fold in those big moments. It's amazing when we talk about the best teams in the league now, and your Lions are always in the mix. They needed the Texans to miss a field goal, but then they had to come back themselves after Goff threw 5 interceptions. The Chiefs needed a blocked field goal, and the Ravens needed a missed 2-point conversion. If we were talking about the 3 best teams in the league, that might have been them right there. All 3 of them kind of snuck away with a victory last week. And, you got to be good, Erik, in these leagues, but sometimes you got to be a little lucky too.
Yeah. I mean, the Ravens game, I completely forgot about that one. A little bit of a PI that wasn't called, but it was a
absolutely
fun game.
It was 2 good teams back and forth, man. They can both score. Like, that Cincy can score. That's the thing about Baltimore. What's a little concerning when you compare them to like the Lions or the Chiefs this year, their defense isn't quite as good as those 2 teams. Those teams have better defenses, have been a little bit more proven this year. And these are a couple of big games this week where we'll have Chiefs Bills. We'll get a look at the Ravens and the Steelers, which is always a really fun rivalry game between those 2. And then a sneaky game that I like a little bit where we have 2 of the better quarterbacks in the league going at it with Herbert and with Joe Burrow a little bit later on today. So let's get into everything. Remember, we'll talk to you a little bit about Boom Fantasy. Erik and I will both have a play for you today. We want to make sure that you get some action on these Sundays. You can get involved. And we'll also talk a little bit about daily racing form and express bet ways you can play the races. There are actually 2 pick 5 carryovers today, Erik.
Oh, we're out.
Churchill Downs and Woodbine. Woodbine has a 20-cent one that you can play that starts in race number 2 today. 137,000 carryover. Churchill, I actually have had a couple pretty good weeks at Churchill, fingers crossed. I didn't hit the pick 5 yesterday, but the last 2 winners were 9-1 and 12-1. I had those back-to-back on top at win bets, and I hit the trifecta in the last race. Actually, last week, fingers crossed, I had one of my better scores in a while, hit the pick 5 for over $5,200 on a $72 ticket too. And that was one that we gave out on the DRF weekend preview show. So lots of good stuff going on there. Lots of great action today. Let's get started, Erik, with a really important divisional game because the Bears, they're just struggling. I mean, a few weeks ago, it's amazing how quickly things flip in any major sports league, but really in the NFL when the team can go, boom, 4-2. Everything looks like they're really moving along really, really well last week. Then they have their bye. Great. You got a young quarterback. You got a young team coming off the bye. They're probably going to figure some stuff out and be even better coming off the bye, right? Nope, not the case. They've lost 3 straight games since, and they've been bad. They've only scored 27 total points in those 3. The receivers aren't getting open. And this is one of the problems that we've seen with young quarterbacks on sometimes bad teams. Caleb's getting a little steppy back there. He's not like been as comfortable looking in the pocket as some of the others. This just feels like do or die moment for them. This feels like back against the wall. You're at home. You got a big division rival coming. It's got to be like you got kitchen sink, everything you have, you're throwing at the Packers right here, right?
When we look at this, LaFleur is 43%. ATS is a road favorite. When the line is 3.5 or more, 38%. What's going on with the Bears offensive line? I know everyone's going to make a big deal of how they played against New England, but they were without 8 of their top 9, without their starting tackles. So, of course, they're going to look bad no matter how bad the defensive front is last week. Now, are the Packers going to be able to create pressure? That's $1 million question. Bears, you can already tell with with Ford coming in as a new OC, there is a change in culture. You can tell these guys are talking different. He's talking a little bit different. Nate Davis, who's been a nightmare since they signed him, they cut him. I think we're going to see a very good effort offensively. I think we're going to see some new things. I'm expecting a bigger game from DJ Moore. Kind of crazy how the backups quarterback's dad was starting all the rumors about Williams wanting some veterans wanting to bet Williams. Bears defense is legit. I think they're going to be able to contain Love. I'm not the biggest Love guy. I'm more worried about Josh Jacobs getting his on the ground. But you know what? Bears, 4th best defense DVOA, 6th best versus the pass. I think they're going to be able to limit the Packers offense. I think they're going to be able to move the ball with some new stuff that they're going to be implementing. I expect a more focused effort from DJ Moore. So I'm going to take the Bears here. I got them at 5.5.
Yep, we're both on the Bears side here. This just feels like one of those games where you can't play the Packers in this spot, right? You're not laying the 5.5 on the road. Maybe you're not there with the Bears as that being your spot, but this is just one of those games where if you're teaching your friends, you're talking to people, these are games where you're not just laying that many points on the road. It's just too much to give, win or lose. Even if the Packers win by 50, you mark that down, you make some adjustments for next week. These are just games that you don't want to go back after you've lost and went, I really laid 5.5 on the road. In these situations, those are just not the best. Bobby Thomas says you sound 1,000,000 times better than yesterday. I love hearing that.
Yesterday was rough.
Uncle Rico pushing through, and Sports Facts likes the Raiders straight up today. I think you and I might be on the old Vegas Raiders a little later on. Let's keep rolling, my friend. Where do we head next? That was game number 1. We go to the Browns at the Saints. Another game where teams have just flipped who they are a couple times throughout this year, right? You have the Browns coming off their bye. They had that nice win in week 8 when Jameis became the starter. It almost feels like that's just a totally different team than all the weird stats we had with Watson earlier in the year. They had that nice win, but then they come back and they just lay an egg the next week. They got their butts kicked by the Chargers. Really disappointing. So which of these two teams shows up, and could they figure some Jameis stuff out maybe coming off the bye? For the Saints, they got their fired coach bump. Defense stood tall. Offense kind of struggled a little bit. They got up to 17-7 lead, and they just kind of kept Atlanta off the scoreboard late. They blocked a field goal. Younghoe Koo missed a couple others. We heard a story about the Saints coach, I think, taking a deuce early before the game. Did you hear that one? Clogging the toilets up a little bit.
Clogging the John.
Wasn't sure if that was going to be. Just wanted to answer this quick question. Early pick 5 is Woodbine. Late pick 5 is Churchill. So the Woodbine one today starts in race 2. The Churchill one starts in race 5. So races 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at Churchill. That one's like 200 and it's a good one, like 250,000 plus carried over. So you can play that one for 50 cents, and the Woodbine you can even play for 20. So if you haven't looked and you just want to kick back and get a little action, still plenty of time to do so there. Check out the Daily Racing Form past performances. So Erik, getting back to this game a little bit more, Browns and Saints. Carr's back. They were leaning on Kamara. They were able to stretch the field a little bit with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. This is something you point out. You don't always have to be as good as the player you're replacing, but even like a template or a guy who can fit the mold. And for MVS, he's not been the best receiver everywhere he's gone, but he does stretch the field for you. And so if you have him running those routes, once in a while, he's going to be open. He's going to have someone beat. And that's the kind of thing they were doing earlier in the year with Shaheed, where the Saints were a little more successful, able to stretch the field. But it's just tough with this team. Both of these two teams are pretty decimated. I couldn't get a real good feel on where to go with the spot here, with the side. Do you have any strong opinion one way or the other?
Yeah, I actually took Tillman over.
Yeah, this is one of your plays, right? Okay.
Yards. Saints give up 169.3 yards per game to opposing wide receivers, averaging 13 yards per catch. Saints also run a lot of man coverage, 8th highest rate. Tillman leads the Browns in air yards versus man and target share, 19.6 versus man coverage. Since the Cooper trade, Tillman has gone over this total in all 3 games. He's averaging 10.6 targets, 7 receptions, and 85 yards. He's the first read in this offense. So I The only thing I did is the Tillman prop over.
Let's move to our next game, Eric. We got the Rammies at the Patriots here. And the Rams had a little bit of a disappointing game last week because where they had gotten themselves, even after the bad start, they were right in contention for the division. If they would have won that game against Miami, they had a home game against Miami last week, and they just didn't play very well. Now they have to bounce back here. They're a big favorite on the road. I just get nervous with this Rams team, one on the road and two really laying points, especially more than a field goal, Eric. As a Rams fan, I don't like this number. I don't like this spot at all. Now, I look, the numbers moved yesterday, a couple days ago, it was 5. Now we're down to 4. And if you've been watching these Patriots games, have they been incredible? No. But did they just look like a much more competent team with a quarterback who can move the ball a little bit down the field? Absolutely they do. May is not perfect, doesn't have many weapons, but he looks pretty comfortable back there. And the Patriots defense, they just lit up Caleb Williams. They smothered him, only allowed 3 points with 9 sacks in the game and only 142 total yards allowed. These are the last 3 games for the Patriots. Win, and an overtime road loss. So definitely a much more competent team than we saw earlier in the year.
I mean, they're definitely playing a lot better. A lot of it has to do with May's ability to extend plays. They made a real weird transaction yesterday. They got rid of Thornton, who I kind of like. That was really odd. I wonder if something happened behind the screens. In terms of this game, look, the Rams got everyone healthy on the offensive line, and it looked as worse as it's done.
It's bad. It was so bad.
When we look at the box score, Rams 8 trips inside Finn's territory, only 16 points, more yards per play. They dominated that game. They should have won that game. McVay 54% as a road dog, 6.1% ROI. However, against the AFC as a favorite on the road, he's only 30%. I really don't know what to do here. Some DFS stuff to look at. Stevenson has 4 TDs in 3 games. Pats are 30th DVOA against the pass. And I know that everyone's going to look at Puka and Kupp, but Davis Allen, who is their tight end, their starting tight end, he's been getting a lot more routes. He's only $2,500 on DraftKings. Throw him in your lineup, and that will open up stuff. And if he just gets 7-8 points, he's going to make your nut for that, and you can use that money someplace else.
So the top 5 selections this week for the Circus Sports, I always like to look in on those, and see who everyone else is jumping along with. Packers -5.5, Browns +1, Steelers +3, Broncos -2.5, Bengals +2. Those are like the consensus top 5 picks this week over on Circa. Also, a couple other things to mention. I'm going to definitely be jumping on to some of the other socials now soon, because the last couple of weeks, Twitter's been kind of struggling a little bit. The last couple of years it's changed, but there's one called Blue Sky that is almost identical to what Twitter looked like at the very beginning. It's just kind of really informational and stuff. So probably going to be popping on there and trying to get, I'm trying to convince Eric to get on over there so we can post some stuff over there too. And then probably on TikTok too, just going to spread out a little bit, get a little, a bit more base, and maybe get a little younger too. Some younger viewers watching and listening. Make sure to keep tuning in over on Instagram also, and subscribe to both of our YouTube channels, because that's the best home base. That's your home base for everything too, right, Eric? YouTube, yeah. You'll get your videos, podcast stuff, like shorts will come up there too. A lot of times if you just have quick hit stuff, live streams that you do with Jim or Chase or some of the other guys when it comes to college. So make sure you're always subscribing to both of the YouTube channels for myself, for Eric. Let's Make Some Money likes the Browns today. And Let's Make Some Money says you sound a little bit better. So that it's amazing. Sometimes we can yell and scream at the doctors, but like for myself earlier this week, Eric, I had strep throat. My family had it. So I knew as soon as I got sick what it was. I went in, I told them, they gave me a couple medications, a couple antibiotics. Boom. Within like 36 hours, I was a different human. When they just know what to give you, it's amazing what it can do for you. Yeah. Let's keep rolling, buddy. This is one of the better games I thought of the week. And this one's always really fun when these two teams get together. It doesn't really matter what the spread is, but for this particular stat, it's important because I played this game earlier in the week when Pittsburgh was at plus 3.5. In this series with Tomlin and Harbaugh as the coaches of these two teams, when there's an underdog of 3+ points in this series, the underdog is 18-2-3 against the spread. Irrelevant of the record. Does not matter what the record is. So whoever's the dog in this series always seems to get the job done. It's moved a little bit, but if we were just going through each coach and like their tendencies and coaches you'd want to play and want not to play and when they do well, this is like the Tomlin spot, right? At home as a dog against a divisional favorite, a team that he knows. Lamar has struggled really bad against the Steelers in history. He just never had any real great Lamar type games against them. And the way that Pittsburgh's been playing with Wilson, he has upgraded their offense quite a bit. He doesn't give them maybe as like play to play, down to down. Fields can pick up 3 or 4 yards a little more often running, but Russ is going to hit the big play down the field a lot more often. He's going to make some of these wide receivers have a higher ceiling with the accuracy he has down the field a little bit more. And it's been better for this team, right? It's a good fit for a team who has solid defense now, a couple playmakers here they can use, good coaching staff. So, I mean, I don't know how good Pittsburgh's going to be. I don't know if this is a team I'm going to bet in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl down the line. In this particular game, though, where Baltimore's coming off that big emotional win, they came all the way back last week and they beat the Bengals. I don't know if you're going to be able to get up again for another game like this back-to-back weeks where you have another big rival. You got to go on the road. Give me the Steelers in here. I locked it in at 3.5. I'm still okay at 3.
Yeah, I gave this one out Tuesday on my show. I like the Steelers. Anything over 3, I got 3.5 too. I say it every week. Tomlin as a dog is my BFF. 69.5% ATS. Home dog, 76% ATS. Is a dog getting 3 or more, 83% ATS. Against Harbaugh as a dog, 12-2-2. In the Tomlin Harbaugh era, the dog has covered 79% of the time. We need to face it. This Ravens defense isn't what it used to be. Hamilton missed practice on Tuesday, was limited. They saying he's going to go. If he doesn't go, it's going to be a pretty big blow to this defense. Ravens per PFF, 7th worst coverage team. 25th DVOA defending the pass, and they've allowed the most passing yards per game. Wilson will have success here.
So can I give you one real quick while you're talking about it too? So the Ravens offensive DVOA, best in the league right now. Awesome. Like it's almost twice as high as, it's almost 2 times better than Washington, who is second coming into this week. But of all of the teams in history that have had like the best offensive DVOA, so if you were looking at teams through 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and comparing them with the Ravens is one of those best offenses. They have by far the worst passing defense among all of those teams. So all of those really good offensive teams that we would have looked at, this team's passing defense is way better. So it's going to be hard to get a feel for them. And if you think about the way they've lost games this year, they blow leads over and over. And it's not as fluky as it might have been a couple years ago where we went, how do they do that? They're pretty well-rounded. They have a terrible secondary. Their defense is just pretty bad back there right now.
Yeah, they've been brutal defensively. Or really needs to go if they're going to look to make a move. Excuse me. Jackson has struggled against the Steelers defense. The right side of the offensive line for the Ravens has been brutal this year. And look, Jackson is Jackson, but Watt should be able to get home. And I feel the Steelers defense will be disciplined enough to stay inside their lanes. I also think it's a big help to the Steelers just having played Jaden Daniels, who is another mobile quarterback. Now you're playing Lamar Jackson right after. Steelers have the 7th best run defense per PFF. DVOA graded 9th defense against the run, only allowing 87 yards per game. Henry has struggled in his career against the Steelers. He's averaging only 60 yards a game. I like the matchup. I like the trends. I got the Steelers 3.5. Anything over a field goal, you should bet.
We're rocking Steelers here. We're also rocking our way to Miami next. They're a 7.5 point favorite over the Las Vegas Raiders. We already had one of the folks in the chat say they like the Raiders today. Straight up sports facts. Good luck to you. playing the Raiders as a big dog. Man, this team, probably to me, one of the more disappointing teams of the year in the Raiders. I'd say both of these teams, like Miami at least is dealing with some injuries, but I was disappointed with their head coach, how incompetent the rest of the roster looked throughout those injuries, that they couldn't sneak another win or two there. They couldn't just find a way to move the ball a little bit better. It looked like the team kind of quit on a few of those games. Now with Tua back, they've been better the last 3 weeks. They scored 27 points. They lost to Arizona by 1. Scored 27 points when they lost by 3 to the Bills. And then they scored 23 in a win against the Rams. The Raiders come off a bye. They lost 5 straight games going into their bye. And what was hard, Eric, like coming into the year, I thought the team could be okay because they had 9 returning starters on the defensive side. But right off the bat, they get their really good defensive end from last year gets hurt. Crosby has not been healthy the whole year, and then Wilkins got hurt. So what was supposed to be the thing that they could lean on, this really strong defensive front, they never really had it. And watching this team, the more and more I watch them is just, man, you got to be careful with the interim coach situation, because you have this guy that the team will rally around and, half the guys want them, but you got to really try to look at it and say, is this a coach that's going to really good all over the place, well-rounded? And I watch Pierce. It's like, he doesn't do well with the offense. He's making bad decisions, and it doesn't seem like these guys have gotten up to play for him. And now it just feels like it almost feels like this is the third Raiders coaching staff in a row that you're just like, are they any good?
Yeah.
But we're talking about off the bye. We're talking about the spot. We're talking about a Dolphins team who, do they really deserve to be more than a touchdown favorite right now when they haven't been all that proven and their defense isn't fantastic?
So I actually have 3 bets in this game. And the first bet is I took the Raiders here. I gave this out on my show as well at 7.5. If it's anything over 7, I like. Teams in a 5-game losing streak that are dogs, 58% ATS. Teams in a 5-game losing streak that are coming off a bye, as like the Raiders, 73%. Teams that won as a dog on Monday Night Football, like the Dolphins are, 46%. Same situation when they're home favorites, it ticks down to 43. Now, Tyreek Hill is hurt. He hurt his neck on a celebration. We really don't know what is going on with him. Even if he plays, he's been awful this year. 100 yards. He's only gone over 100 yards once, averaging 51 per game. We look at the box score of the Rams and Dolphins game. Dolphins, a little bit of a fraudulent winner. So all that stuff points me, excuse me, to the Raiders. And then the Raiders named Scott Turner as their new OC. Scott Turner's first move was to bring his old man, Norv Turner, on as a special assistant. What is that going to mean? It's going to mean more running the ball. The Dolphins are 25th DVOA defending the run. PFF graded the 27th worst tackling team, allowing 114 yards per game. I think we're just going to see a heavy run dosage, and I don't think it's going to be Madison. I think it's going to be Zamir White. Zamir White is a more talented back. He got on the bad side of Getsy. That's why Madison leapfrogged him. I think with Turner coming in, we're going to see more Zamir White. I bet Zamir White over 15.5 rushing yards. I think he has a chance to – I think he's going to have a huge game today. And also I bet him plus 500 to score a touchdown. He's in my DFS lineups. I think we're going to see it back to how it was last year to close the season when White was touching the ball 20 times a game. I think the Raiders are going to keep this close on the ground, and the Dolphins have been an absolute train wreck. So I'm going to take the Raiders and then the 2 white props.
Eric and I both on the Raiders side here. Eric with a couple of props on the white side. Man, his preseason props were really high up. Like everybody was projecting him to just be such a bigger part of this offense, and this team to be just a little more competent than they have been. Maybe they can bounce back a little bit today and just kind of pick up some momentum coming off their bye. We move to the Jags at the Lions. Are we Mac Jones in it again here?
Lawrence could be out for the year.
Yeah, right. And especially with as bad as they've been, like what's the rush record-wise? Like what are you rushing him back for? You're probably better off just struggling, losing some games here. Mac Jones did not look very good last week. I mean, this is a really hard game for me to play because the Lions, like any team that gets up to a number around 14, I'm not going to be all that interested in. You have your Lions who come off a bad game last week where they come all the way back, like a nice emotional win. They get a big victory. This is one of the flattest spots of the earth. This is IHOP right here, like the flat pancakes, but I don't know if I can get there, honestly, with the Jags, because they might be at that point of the season where they just don't have enough to play for. This is just a pure stay away game for me here.
I played the 14.
I understand.
Mac Jones is starting, but is he really that big of a downgrade from Lawrence? We need to kind of be honest. The offense looked better last week against the Vikings with Jones at the helm. Bigsby is going to be out. Obviously, it's going to be a huge Etienne game. Campbell, 46-26 ATS in his coaching career. I mean, it's just absolutely insane what he's going into last game. He was 40-15 his last 55 covering, which is nice. Absolutely unheard of. But when you look at the game against the Texans, the game against the Packers, and even the games against the Titans, all three of those games, when you just look at the box score, they could have lost. They were outgained every time, more yards per play. They just haven't been looking well at all. Teams laying 10 points or more at home, 48% ATS. Arnold's been brutal. Jags should be able to take advantage of him. We need to remember, miss kick here, Titans play a little defense, don't give up. Packers don't turn over the ball. The Lions could easily be 6-3 or 5-4.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think 14 is just way too much here.
It's for anybody. For anybody, it would have been. It would be.
Principal play had to take it 14.
Lawrence, this will be a fun conversation to have one week when we're maybe like a slower week or just on a podcast too. The conversation for biggest bust ever with expectations, because the key of that is expectations, right? Because he wouldn't be the biggest bust ever. He won a playoff game and he had a decent year, but this guy was talked about, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. We were waiting for him for years to come out. We were saying he should have come out a year before and he would have been better than a lot of the quarterbacks in the league. He just, he reminds me a little bit of like, of the really good college basketball player that doesn't really take that step forward into the NBA, that like a guy like Morrison, he's better than Morrison was, but like it reminds me of like the Morrison, JJ Redick guys. Like, and JJ had a good NBA career. He's coaching for the Lakers, but like they never hit that peak, right? They're never the number one guy. They're never like a real face of the league type. You're just a guy who was one of the better college players and didn't make that real transition. I mean, Johnny Manziel didn't have as much like he's going to be a good player. We all knew who he was, but this is definitely one of those guys that felt like they were going to be a big hit. And I would say that Caleb is probably the biggest guy since him, right? From as far as like reputation and like, oh, this guy could come in and be like how Mahomes is. So Caleb, not that we're already on that kind of a watch for him, but what hurts Caleb and in this situation is when guys like, Daniels have looked better. When May comes in and looks decent, not really dealing with like a whole lot of playmakers and weapons. And even Bo Nix has looked a little more competent at times this year. So that's what you got to worry about now, is when you have those expectations, whether it's fair or not, you're always going to be compared to the guys around you. And if they're playing really well, that hurts you even more. We got on Bryce Young more because Stroud was playing really well. Mm-hmm. You looked over and you wanted to compare the two of them. So, Erik, what do we do here with the Vikings at the Titans? Vikings are a 5.5-point favorite at the Titans here. They've come back to life a little bit, but on offense, defensively, they've been really, really good. And it was another weird game where they had 400 yards, they had 28 first downs, they had 42 minutes of time of possession, but they were only able to score 12 points. We've seen some of the mistakes. These were a couple from Darnold, just really poor execution overall from a team that dominated the box score. One of the interceptions went off Jefferson's hand. Sam took a bad sack. These were the types of games that we worried about and we talked about earlier in the year with Sam Darnold, where he can still look good on a football field, but he's inconsistent. he makes mistakes. He tries to do too much. We joked about it when he was in USC. He's a carny folk because he has small hands. He's always been a guy that had a tough time holding on to the ball because he didn't have the biggest hands in the world for a quarterback. And I just don't, for a team with a really good defense, that's offense is starting to come back to earth a little bit and regress to the mean. I don't really like laying numbers like this on the road with them.
As crazy as it sounds, I kind of like the Titans here. I feel
no, I do too. They're the spot.
I feel the book is always as on Darnold. I think we're starting to see the real one. 5 INTs the last 2 games.
Yep.
The question is, can you trust Will Levis? 1-to-1 TD to INT ratio, 175 yards per game. That's what he's averaging. Pollard is hurt. How is that going to affect the run game? Titans' defensive line is the strength of the team. And the Vikings have some offensive line issue, plus Darnold struggles facing pressure. Snead is hurt, but if he plays, he can shadow Jefferson, take him away. Also, Snead tweeted out a picture of him in a Chiefs uniform saying he looks happy.
That's great.
And then it was released. I'm hearing that Callahan has lost the locker room. People are upset. Titans, the spot says to take the Titans.
Yeah.
But after that game against the Jets, they have been on my do not bet list.
Well, the thing about them too, they've got an insane stat. So if you're just looking at them defensively, their defense, very, very good. They only allow 273 yards per game, which is second in the league in defense. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at scoring defense, they allow 26 points per game, 26.7, which is 29th. You know how insane that is for a team to be giving up the second most yards in a game or per game, but allowing the 27th most points? They've had 1 or 2 games where things flip for them, but they've also been a little unlucky. Like, that's not something that's sustainable when you're that good, usually down the down, because that kind of matches the eye test, right, Eric? You're watching these games going, man, like, this team doesn't make a lot, like their defense is tough. Like, they don't make a lot of mistakes defensively. And then all of a sudden you get one of those Levis awful turnovers that flips the field. And then it just puts their defense in a terrible position, and that's happened over and over. Maybe now with Minnesota not as efficient as they were, they're making a few mistakes here and there. That's all that you need. They leave 1 or 2 on the table in a game like this. And that's actually the regression to the mean you look at when you handicap football games. A team like Minnesota, who was probably a little over their head earlier in the year, and based on the numbers, the Titans, their defense is a little better than we all think, and they should come back to life a little bit more. So it's another game where, just on paper, as a gambler, I have to take the Titans in this spot. It's an ugly spot. It's a dirty spot, but they were a little more competent last week. They took an early lead. And then the Chargers, it was 13-10. And the Chargers stacked back-to-back touchdown drives, and then it just kind of flipped. Levis got sacked. Everything changed there. But the Titans left points on the field too. They had a defensive score called back. They had back-to-back red zone penalties in the second quarter, knocking them 20 yards back and leading to a missed field goal. They were 0 for 2 in the red zone prior to that late touchdown from Ridley. So, I think they're still a little bit better than their record might suggest. We're on the Titans side here, plus the 5.5. Colts at the Jets, Eric, for our next play. Oh, what happened to Levis's girlfriend from the draft?
No idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, never bet a quarterback that puts the mayo in the coffee. I know that was a weird one. And
the spot says to do it. I just can't.
Yeah.
I get teams that I just can't bet on, and they're on my list.
Colts at the Jets. This is one of those teams that I love. I got to say, I love watching the Jets get their butts kicked. I don't care very much when certain teams lose. I'm a fan of my teams. I know, as the teams that I root for, like the Lakers and the Dodgers and stuff, people get excited when those teams lose. I'm less like that with other teams. I'm more excited about the teams I like or the teams I bet. But man, with the Jets, I love watching Rodgers squirm around just because of all the crap off the field, how hypocritical he's been, telling people to focus while he's talking politics and telling people to do this while he's out there doing the McAfee show every week. And it is sort of funny how they've made all these adjustments, and what other adjustments are you going to make now? You fired your coach. You brought in all the guys Rodgers wanted. You changed play callers. You just don't have a team that is all that great. Your defense has some holes. And now they're going to have to deal with this. Is this going to be Richardson?
Yeah, Richardson's here. And I mean, I really feel the big thing with the Jets that no one's talking about is they're just wasting Hall and Wilson's young years.
Yep.
Obviously, Richardson's going. What does that mean to the offense? More down the field shots, also more RPOs.
And I think because he's been struggling so much throwing the ball, they just got to let him get comfortable with his legs a little bit, right? Not trying to make him drop back and pass 30 times in a row. Get him a few 5 yards and out of bounds and stretch the legs a little bit.
Yeah. More RPOs. Jets are awful defending the run, 27th DVOA defending the run, allowing 134 yards per game, 25th most. Pittman is playing. He gives the Colts another weapon. Now, look, I said it when Sauce Gardner came out. If they allow him to hand fight, he's going to be good. If they call the hand fighting, he's going to struggle. Well, they're calling the hand fighting this year. The Jets had the second most PI calls on them this season, have given up the second most yards. Also, teams that lost by 20 points or more. Oh, no, sorry. Slykin, 59% ATS. Road Dog, 56% ATS. I think this is going to be a heavy dosage of Taylor. I think they're just going to force them. They're going to just out physical the Jets at the point of attack. Teams with a 333 winning percentage or less that are favored by 4 or more are 40% ATS the last 20 years. Last decade, they are 32%. Give me the Colts here, +4. And also, I'll say this. If Zach Wilson was the quarterback of the Jets,
they'd be better.
They'd be in playoff contention.
They had like all of the metrics that you looked at from last year to this year. They were just as good, if not better, last year. They had a better defense last year. And
defense has been worse since what's his face left.
Oh yeah, they've been much worse. And I do think there's a thing with Rodgers and this group where, like, if you're in a locker room, there's probably just a lot of guys who don't like what's been going on. He comes in, he brings everything over. Like, he's not been playing all that well. Some guys probably are fine with it because he's a veteran. He's been around. He's proven. But I bet you there are a few guys in there, especially some of the younger guys, that are probably upset. They just don't like the way it's gone. He comes in and, he's like this godly figure. What has he done for them? Nothing. You talk about disappointing draft picks. How about trades? This was one of them over the last couple of years with the expectations for this team. They're over under 9.5 this year.
Yeah.
10, like as we said, they hadn't had a winning season in 15 years. And so how could you peg them that high? You're absolutely right. And Eric, we go back and forth because there are things that we were right on and things that we were wrong on. And there'll be plenty of teams I can look at and say, yep, I was wrong on him or I was wrong on them. You and I were spot on this team both of these last few years. And in particular this year when everybody was jumping on them. Because look, you could have looked at their roster and said, yeah, they brought in a couple playmakers. Their defense is a little more solid. They added some spots to the offensive line. They're from the top down, the way they were run, whether it was Saleh, whether it was Hackett, whether it was Rodgers, whether it was the organization that just hasn't won very much. It's just not well run right now. And that's what happens from the top down. It all trickles down. You and I are both on the Colts side here. Let's get Richardson running around today all over the place. Does Seattle have one last push coming off their bye, Eric? Because they had a great start to the season. They're up 3. They were up to 3-0 early on, and then the wheels just completely fall off for them. They lose 5 of 6 before their bye. Now they're coming off their bye. They're trying to find anything they have left to try to secure any last chance at a playoff spot, but they're going to run into a San Francisco team that's getting a little bit healthier. How about this one? The 49ers are 17-2 in all games played after their bye weeks since 2002. So they just make the adjustments. They figure some things out. They recorded season highs in yards after the catch over expected, and 20-yard plus yards after the catch plays last week against the Bucs. But one thing that we found for this 49ers team, one, their defense isn't as good as they were in the last couple of years. Actually, for the last 8 seasons, only one coach has underperformed in its team's post-game win expectancy, and that's Shanahan. Because the rosters are good, the situations they're in are good. Like most games, they're supposed to win. And a lot of those games have gotten either closer or post-game. There's a few things that have happened that kind of hurt the 49ers' chances of winning those games. What do we do here with them, though? Getting a little bit healthier. The question I still have we heard anything about a change in kicker for them?
No,
because this is a guy they drafted last year early. So this isn't like a situation where you can just go cut the guy. You have to give him a few more looks, but that's scary for a team when they have to try to cover with margin, right? You miss a field goal or two, you have a guy that you can't really lean on. You throw him out there, everyone's starting to get anxious a little bit, especially when you're a 6-point favorite in a divisional game.
I wanted 7 here. 7 was my bottom point. It was 6.5 when we started. Now it's dipped down to 6. Geno Smith leads the league in interceptions and yards. Kenneth Walker not being able to get going. Only 2 games over 20 touches. Only 1 game over 100 yards, and that was week 1. What's up with DK Metcalf? How's his knee? He leads the league in deep throws. Having him there opens up the field. Seattle's offensive line has been brutal. They're getting Cross back, but Williams unexpectedly announced his retirement. 49ers, 5th best defense per PFF. How is that offensive line going to be able to handle that defensive front? I know Cross is back, but like I said, Williams retired. Excuse me. Shannon has a home favorite, 45%. Laying 6 or more, 41. 49ers offense can't seem to get it going. CMC, not 100%. Red zone has been struggling. Look, last week, our 2 big plays was Pearsall over 22.5 receiving yards and him to score a touchdown at plus 390. He's in the Ayuk row. He's still a little underpriced on DK. In my eyes, you can look to play him, but I wouldn't play his receiving prop total because that's been jacked up a lot. Last time they played, the game was 3.5 for 49ers on the road, but the Seahawks had a ton of injuries playing on a short week. I don't know. To me, the situation, the spot, and everything says to take
Seattle, but I can't.
Me too. I want the 7.
Me too.
I didn't get the 7, so
I didn't love the number enough. Like it's not enough value. It feels about right, and that's the thing. We have to be a little more disciplined with the numbers here. Let's keep rolling along, Eric. Where do we head next? We go Falcons. Atlanta at the Broncos. So the Falcons. This one's, I think, kind of flipped back a little bit, right? The Broncos are now 1.5-point favorite here. Just to give everybody a heads up, Schefter tweeted a few minutes ago, actives for today: Jaylen Warren, Devontae Adams, Tyler Boyd, Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, Montez Sweat, Michael Mayer, inactive, KJ Osborne, Harrison Bryant, a couple just to mention, and I'll let you know any others that pass on through. So let's get into the Broncos. Bo Nix hosting the Falcons. Atlanta, we saw last week, Atlanta, Cousins was really struggling. He missed some passes early, didn't really get into a rhythm. They put up a lot of offense. They averaged 6.4 yards per play, but they were 5 of 14 on third down. They missed a couple field goals, a bad fourth quarter interception. They just didn't really look good. And you start diving into Atlanta's like overall metrics this year. They're not all that impressive by a lot of the advanced stats. I think they're 17th in team DVOA. And you look at like their strengths and their weaknesses, they're 24th, I think, in defense. They're maybe 8th in offense, but they're not really fantastic in anything. So I'm not sure who this Denver team is too. They want to lean on their defense a little bit. Their schedule's been kind of soft. They've taken advantage in some wins and some victories. I'm kind of hemming and hawing back and forth. Eric, you got some thoughts on this game?
I have no idea what to do in this game. When you look at it, Cousins banged up. The big issue is offensive line. I think McGregor hasn't been that good. Livingston next to him. Is he able to band-aid what he can do? Bergeron's been bad. Broncos are the 8th best pass rush in the league. I think they're going to be able to get to Cousins. Now, the thing that the Falcons did, because Cousins' arm strength is down, they moved London to the inside. and that's going to be big. But Cousins does struggle with a pass rush. Falcons 11th worst tackling team in the league. Falcons have only given up 2 rushing touchdowns on the season. However, they've given up the 3rd most TDs to opposing wide receivers. Cortland Sutherland, 3rd in league in red zone targets. Maybe take him a touchdown bet. I know everyone's on the estimating train. We had him last week plus 800 to score a touchdown. Didn't get it done. His props drop. Javonte Williams is up to 350 to score a touchdown. Maybe look at him, because even last week's game, he was the one getting the red zone carries. But I'm not doing anything in this game in terms of betting wise.
Yep, total stay away for me on this one as well. Chiefs at the Bills. It's hard not to when you see him up there as a dog with Mahomes, man. Like his dog numbers are pretty insane, right? Do you have him? You have some of his like numbers as a dog?
As a dog, where is it? I have it all right here.
Yeah,
if a dog, when he's a dog, 12, 1-1 ATS with his lone ATS loss though to Josh Allen.
Yeah, to the Bills. And the Bills have played them well in the regular season. And this feels like one of those games too where you've got if Kansas City, for example, if they win this game, just looking at the standings for the AFC, so the Bills would be 8-3. The Ravens would have 3 losses, and the Chargers would have 3 losses. They would be 3 to 4 games ahead of all of they could have a 4-game lead in the division. Like after the weekend, let's say if like the Ravens beat the Steelers, like that would be pretty insane. I mean, they could have almost the whole back half of the season off. We really rarely see this where this is a big game for that, but it's a bigger game for Buffalo because Kansas City has so much wiggle room now. Like they've built themselves such a big advantage where if you lose this game, look at the schedule that Kansas City has coming after this. They've got like Carolina coming up next. They got a couple soft games. Like they need to figure some things out for them because they don't have Rice. They need to get Hopkins more acclimated. I think Pacheco's coming back today, right?
No,
not yet, but he's activated one more week. See, and that's kind of where they are. Like they're not in push it, we need to win this week mode. They're in let's get everybody back and as healthy as possible. That's why this one's kind of a scary game for me, Eric. Like almost always when that dog number flips up, it's an instant Mahomes for me. I'm a little going back and forth here because I just don't feel like Kansas City needs this game quite as much. And with the way their season has been, so many of these close one-score games, we always see it every year. I'm not telling you that Kansas City is a bad team. By the metrics we're looking at, they're a top 10 team. They're still good. They're number 3 in DVOA. They're number 10 in offense. They're number 4 in defense. Their defense is one of the better defenses in the league. But they are due for some regression. They are due for a couple of these close games to bounce the other way. Is it this week when the Bills are going to get them? What do you think?
I have no idea. I think this is going to be a coin flip game. I think you can get plus money on both sides. For me, the bet is Kareem Hunt over 14.5 receiving yards.
And if you're saying that, do you wait? And if one of these teams is down by 10 or by 14, do you just sprinkle a little something on at that moment? Just because that's like the biggest. I can
get plus. Like right now, take the plus money on the Chiefs. Chiefs will be up at some point in the game. Then you
go the other way. Yep.
I did Kareem Hunt over 14.5 receiving yards. Bills give up the most receiving yards to opposing running backs, allowing 54.5 yards per game. They have allowed the most receptions to running backs as well, 19th DVOA, defending the running backs in the pass game. Hunt has gone over this 3 of his last 6 games for the season. He's averaging 19.3 yards in the air.
So, yeah, this one was asked for you. Any round robins today for you, Eric? College one would have been awesome if the wheels didn't fall off for San Jose State. So we put you on the spot there. If you don't have one or you want to come up with one to give to Sports Facts. Okay, what is your round robin today?
I did a touchdown round robin. It is, oh my God, what was it? Zamir White was one of them. Tillman, DJ Moore, and Javonte Williams. So Cedric Tillman, DJ Moore, Zamir White, Javonte Williams to score a touchdown.
Round robins there for the Tutties. Great to hear from you, Sports Facts. Love to hear from Sports Facts. I hate the Lakers. Let's make some money. Everyone out there, Bobby Thomas, smooth Bobby Thomas, checking in. Thanks so much, all of you, for hanging out with us on this Sunday morning. We still have a lot of NFL season we're going to be rolling through, and we're going to be really ramping up the social media. Eric's doing a great job, like making some graphics, putting videos together and stuff. And now I got my son Milo 5th birthday today. We're going to be over at Jumpify, jumping around a little later on. And then in the next few weeks, the focus is really going to be on getting over to some new socials and really getting everybody some great best bets and plays each and every week. A couple more games to dive into, Eric, before we finish up here. Another really good one, man. So this is your Sunday night football game. We have very good Sunday late game, Chiefs, Bills. A lot of people are going to be watching that. And then Sunday night, we've got the Bengals and the Chargers. This game is fascinating to me because when you look at the Chargers are 6-3. And here are the wins that the Chargers have. The teams that they beat this year are the New Orleans Saints, Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans, Carolina Panthers, Las Vegas Raiders, Cleveland Browns. Just for this conversation, I'm going to use the DVOA metric because there's all sorts of different metrics we can use. But based on DVOA, they have played the teams that are number 20 through 32. Those are the teams they've beat. And New Orleans is probably worse than 20 because New Orleans actually has some of those first few games when they were really healthy. Like right now, that's not even their team. And when the Chargers beat them, the Chargers beat Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
So if you look at every team they beat, they have been awful on offense. And so what happens in those games, the Chargers get up, they can run the ball, and the other team has nothing they can do offensively to hurt the Chargers. The teams that the Chargers have lost to, the number 10 offensive DVOA, Kansas City, loss. Number 11 offensive DVOA, Arizona, loss. Number 18 offensive DVOA, Pittsburgh, lost. So the only 3 teams that are above 20 in offensive DVOA that even have competent offenses, the Chargers haven't been able to keep up with them. They just don't have the weapons there. They're a well-coached team that knows what they want to do right now. They want to run the ball, they want to get up, and they want to not have to do a whole lot. Look at who the Bengals, they're 4-6, but look at their losses. They lost week 1 to the Patriots, week 1 of the season. Their other losses, twice to the Ravens, once to the Eagles, once to the Commanders. That's some of the best offenses in the entire league right there. So I think, I know it's not always that easy, Eric, but when you're just comparing the schedules these two teams have faced, the teams they've faced, and then right now, back against the wall, the Chargers are in a pretty nice spot. Like they're not going to win the division most likely, but in the AFC, they're in a really good spot for a playoff position. And for the Bengals, where it feels like their season's been terrible, they're only 1 game behind the Broncos right now. They're 4-6. The Broncos are 5-5. And if the Bengals win this game, they're right back in the mix. I think this is a really good spot for the Bengals. The only thing that worries me, Eric, is just coming off of the game last week, where that was their big emotional game against their rival. They had the tough loss. They were up big. They blew that game. They go back and forth. They have everything coming back again this week, but they have to get up for this game. Like they're not good enough to come out and have a flat spot right now. They have to be focused and know they can't throw any more games away. They can probably only lose 1 or 2 more games this year, realistically. So I just think it feels like a great matchup, a great spot. I don't think this Chargers team is quite as good as their record. But the thing that scares me playing against the Chargers, Herbert has looked way healthier the last few weeks. He's moving around more comfortable. He's like just been more athletic getting out of the pocket. I just still don't trust their playmakers. I still don't trust when they need to go get a 3rd down and 5. Who are they going to get the ball to? Do they have those guys? I'm on the Bengals here. I like this spot today. How about for you in this game? Bengals.
You like the Bengals?
Chargers.
They're plus money to make the playoffs. Definitely look to bet that.
Yep.
Also, I think they're like 50, 60 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Look to pay that as well. I did Justin Herbert over 234.5 yards passing. The way to attack the Bengals defense is in the air. PFF 28th worst coverage grade. DVOA has them as a 27th worst defense against the pass. They're allowing 222.2 yards passing per game, 23rd worst in the league. 2 of the last 3 quarterbacks have gone over this total. The one who didn't was Gardner Minshew. Herbert only averages 209.8 yards per game, but his last 5, he is healthy. They are throwing the ball more. He's averaging 262.2 yards. I expect this to be a high-scoring game, up and down, and Bengals are good against the run. They're one of the top 5 team against the run. They limited Derrick Henry. They're going to force the Chargers to pass, so I'm going to bet the Herbert over 234.5 yards.
Let's get some Bengals to get up big, and then Herbert just to get plenty of garbage time passing yards, trying to get them back into the game. That would be great for the both of us. We finish up, Eric. Anything else you want to mention there before we get to Monday night?
No.
Let's close things out with the Texans at the Cowboys. This would have been a weird one to say earlier in the year that the Texans would be a 7-point favorite on the road at Dallas. But this Cowboys team, man, they don't have Dak anymore. And I was listening to like one of the Greeny hot takes. I don't really watch the ESPN stuff anymore. Once Sports Center was kind of out of the mix years back. I'm not into the shouty shows. I think that's what PFF calls them. They shout, they have the take and they debate it. But Greeny was just talking about how poorly built this Cowboys team is, where you have like quarterback that you're paying a ton, wide receiver that you're paying a ton, star defensive player Parsons that you're paying a ton. And then they just don't have a lot of around that, like in the fill-in spots. Another team, Eric, that we looked at the beginning of the season, you and I were all over their under.
Yeah.
And
not
even
make the playoffs.
And just all of those, because they just looked like a team that wasn't as good as they've been the last few years. They had guys that they had to pay up. And when that happens, you can't pay the rest of your guys as much. And so it starts to fall through the cracks. You just don't have as much depth there. I mean, this is a tough one because you have Houston, who had that really brutal loss. The Texans it looked like they were going to beat Detroit the entire game. They end up losing that one. Dallas has been as bad as possible. They have no quality running backs, no real number 2 wide receiver. Defense is O-line struggling. I mean, this has to be the Dallas at home spot to play, right? I'm not laying it with the Texans, but are you there with Dallas? Can you do it with Cooper Rush?
We know what's going on with CeeDee Lamb. He has this serious injury now. They've been very hush-hush on if he's going to play or not. Also, what's going on with Nico Collins? Now I know they said he's going to go. I want confirmation he's going to go, because I do think if he does, that's going to move the lineup. When you look at how much production he is responsible for CJ Stroud over his career, and hell, even this season. Teams after losing by 28 or more, like the Cowboys, 54% ATS the last 20 years. When it's the same in this scenario and they're a dog, 57. When the line is 6.5 or more, same scenario, it's 60%. Like you said, it says to take the Cowboys here, but I need to know what's going on with CD. If CD isn't there, that's another weapon. They are down. And the line will go up even more. So the line right now, if CD plays, it's going to stay the same. If he doesn't play, it's going to kick up more. So just hold tight and then bet the Cowboys tomorrow as soon as we hear news.
Eric, I know you're sick, so we don't want to keep you talking all too much, but I wanted to ask you 2 quick questions before we get out of here, because I haven't talked to you all that much over the last few weeks. Folks, all of you too, thanks for hanging out with us. If you have any last-minute questions or comments, throw them in the chat right now. We'll answer them in the next minute or two. And make sure if you can, I've been a little quiet on socials the last few weeks, but we're going to really ramp things up now with the last part of the NFL season, getting into big racing in a month or so from Santa Anita. Gulfstream starts really soon, so excited for that. But Eric, we were talking about Dallas, the Cowboys. Just a couple days ago, there was a big event at the Cowboys Stadium. Did you see anything with that Tyson fight?
I saw a little bit. I mean,
what were your thoughts kind of going into it? And then any quick thought coming out of it? I'm curious. One thing, because one of the reasons why I thought to mention it was Michael Irvin was on the broadcast, like starting to put in Jerry Jones, like, hey, you got to hire Dion. You got to hire Dion for next year. So that was definitely becoming a thing. But give us a 20, 30 seconds on what you thought about the Mike Tyson fight.
I was having a hard time getting it to load and a lot of
Yeah.
streaming issues. I mean, that's not good. Obviously, WWE is going over there.
And they got the NFL games coming up right on Christmas.
That isn't good. They need to get that sorted out. I mean, the whole thing's staged at the end of the day. The whole thing was staged. I do think it's funny, though. They had curtains for that, but they don't have curtains for when the Cowboys play.
Right. Or curtains for when you go to the back and you see Mike Tyson's ass cheeks. Right. I don't know if you saw those.
I did. It was just a low budget. It was just a low budget production.
I know. It's disappointing. That's the thing. It's like Amazon does a pretty good job with their productions. You know what I mean? On the football games. Like, that's the thing. If you want to make it, you got to make it a little more legit. Like this, that was too much like some of those thriller shows and not as much like a big boxing event. It felt like a big event, but I agree with you. It was like, unfortunately, you have this incredible women's fight where the loser, Serrano, got probably robbed. It was a really good fight, though. And then afterwards, the main event just doesn't live up to it because you could see Mike he didn't have the legs, one, but two, we don't know what's real and what's not. We don't know what
he jacked him that one time.
Early on in like round 1 or 2, and then he just stopped.
Yeah.
It was like he, I can't do that. And then after the fight, too, Paul talked about how, I kind of could have gone after him more and I didn't. And then he already called out Logan. So if we see Mike Tyson versus Logan, then we really, really know all of this was just the big money grab for a series of these. And then I got to ask you one more because I got to ask about this as me. But I'm asking it because I'm also giving you credit because when you and I talked right after the NBA draft this year, one of the first things you said was, dude, connect. I don't know how he dropped all the way to the Lakers. This guy is an absolute baller. Yeah. Dalton Connect, who was like one of the better scorers in college basketball last year as a older player. And for what the Lakers needed, they needed shooting and they needed a guy who could come in right now and play, not a project, not a guy who 3 years is going to be ready. And who knows how good he'll be, but his last 3 games right now, he's averaged 20 points and the key was, there were 2 of these games that the Lakers probably would have lost. And that's what happens, right? You need a player like that you're not quite expecting to flip things for you. And he scored 27 points last night. He's a little more than a shooter. I didn't know as much about him. And when I heard you get really excited, like, man, this guy is ready to rock. I knew because you're not out here trying to pump me up about the Lakers ever. You're not trying to make me feel better about the Lakers. But you said, I like this guy. And he's a player. Like, he's an NBA rotation player, no doubt about it.
He's a dog, man. He can shoot. He can extend. And he can create as well. He can create. And he's mature. He's not going to want the ball. He's not good defensively, but he'll try.
But he's big enough to where he's not a complete liability, right? Like, he's not a small shooter who just stands up. He just stands up and moves his feet with his hands up. He tries. And the thing that you said, I love, if you're someone who hasn't seen a whole lot of him, he'll set up outside the 3. And he'll shoot a couple threes, and then he'll kind of lull you so that you just sort of think he's a 3-point shooter. And then once you start cheating out on him, he goes by you. He's not just a 3-point shooter. He can run some pick and roll. And twice last night, he was kind of scrapping it up for a rebound, and he got a rebound, and he like jumped and jammed it back down. And people weren't expecting him to throw one down like that. And then he kind of like bumped up. So he's got a little dog in him too, which I like, because he's had to be the man at junior colleges. He's had to be the guy that was like the leading scorer on bad teams for a bunch of years. He's been in probably really bad situations. And so now he's sitting there next to LeBron and Anthony Davis when those guys draw a lot of attention. That's probably a lot easier place for him to be than he's been in a lot of places,
It's a great spot for him. I mean, and he's learning from
a guy who was almost like him as a player too, right? Yeah. Like, who I think Dalton can maybe even do a little more. Like, Redick was very good too. We can forget, like, he was very good before he became more of just the shooter. But anyways, I know this was football. I had to pick your brain though, because I was excited. We get excited for the young guys as much as for our teams winning, right? Like, when you see the good young guys on your team and go, man, this guy could be a guy that could be a part of the Lakers with Austin maybe, and Max Christie, like a good group of some young guys for 5 or 6 years as AD gets older. So I'm a little excited there, but I'm always excited to be talking sports with my good friend, Erik. Go get some medicine, buddy. Go rest and get those pipes feeling better. You and I will be talking next week. We'll be back on my podcast Wednesday to go through everything happening. Erik's podcast on Tuesday. I always send in a best bet for horse racing, and Erik kind of recaps everything what happened the last week of the NFL, gives you some early look ahead bets for next week NFL. Anything else on the plate that you want to mention, buddy?
Our Boom Fantasy stuff.
Yes, we got to get Boom Fantasy bets for today. So let's pull them up. We've got the graphics for those Boom Fantasy plays. Erik, why don't you start us off? Here's yours for today.
I did White over 17.5 yards running. I think he's going to be a big part of the offense. And I did Tillman over the 57.5. Again, big part of the offense. And Herbert, they're going to need to throw the ball to win.
Erik, for the folks out there who maybe have not signed up for Boom Fantasy, or they're looking at it like, okay, what are they throwing up here? This is just props. We're parlaying our props together. When you do so, you can play it like a fantasy lineup. So it's totally legal when you go to Boom Fantasy. And then promo code
ETOFT21.
So there you go. Erik's Boom Fantasy for today. What they do on a lot of these sites is they'll give you like a boost. Like they'll give you a one prop that you can bet that they'll have adjusted all the way down. This was one of them. You can actually spin the wheel also on some of these, and they'll give you a chance to maybe win 5 times or 10 times or 20 times your money. I went Russell Wilson, the over passing yards, talking about how bad that Baltimore secondary has been. And I think that they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit. And this was all the way down now to 169.5. And for the Raiders defensively, they've been so bad as well, secondary. So those are my 2 plays for my Boom Fantasy for today. Make sure you head on over there, sign up right now, use that promo code. It helps me and Erik out a little bit. Don't forget when you're playing the races today, a couple of those big pick 5 carryovers at Churchill and over at Woodbine. So anything you need, head to drf.com. And then the tournaments, you want to get qualified for the big tournaments coming up. There's a big one on opening day at Santa Anita. That's about 6 weeks away from right now. Erik, my friend, anything else to say before we get out of here?
Oh, the best bets, dude.
Yeah, dude, that's why we're co-hosts, because when I'm telling you if we have anything else to say, you tell me, yeah, Gino, we do have a little more to say. Let's show you, if you're just looking for one play today, something that me and Erik like most, maybe you can only, that's all you have on your bankroll. I get it. We have good weeks. We have bad weeks. Sometimes you can't make all the bets you want to make. Here's the ones that we feel the most confident in.
My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold.
Me and Uncle Rico are off to the club after that one. I like it, man. I'm all pumped up. Doing a great job with the videos and the clips. Okay, I'll ask you now one more time, my friend, as we get ready. Anything else you want to mention? I was almost going to show that bets again because I was so excited about it.
No. Good luck in your bets, and hopefully we can cash some tickets.
Okay, you feel better today, buddy. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We love hearing from you. Sports Facts. I hate the Lakers. I know. I hate the Lakers. I still appreciate you checking in. Let's make some money. Bobby Thomas. All of you out there, best of luck on this Sunday. We'll talk to you again very, very soon. We say goodbye on NFL Betting Blitz.